days before even coming out to project setup phase. So you must see that in some organizations, especially at the bigger institutions like UN, EU, USAID, and several other organizations. Before they implement any project, they first have to identify or define the project. And that identification and definition of the project is the research component of the project. That is where they carry out the research. It could be formative assessment, it could be needs assessment, it could be baseline study, it could be feasibility study, it could be situation analysis, or any kind of evaluation that will inform them of the project they want to embark on. That is the identification and the definition phase of in the project lifecycle. And this is done mostly at the top level because these projects that come to us as local organizations to implement, they have already been designed from the top. That means donors have already done research and they already have a report that inform the program or the project. And that report is also useful to you as the local partner, implementing partner to the organization. So you can read that research report to give you information or better understand the problem that your project that you are trying to solve. And you can also develop a plan on how you're going to solve the problem identify. So project identification and definition phase is a very important component within the project initiation phase. And some in this at this donors level and at the NGO level, once they have identified and defined the project, they move to project setup phase. And the project setup phase is all about initiating the project again. After they've done the research, now they have the research report. The research report has given them understanding of the real problem, and it has also given them broader understanding of different stakeholders involved within that particular sector. They use the research report to set up the project. Setting up the project is where they reference the research report and then come up with a smaller report that will inform them of what needs to be done. During the project setup phase, they can decide on the specific issue that they want to address. Remember, during the project identification and definition phase, there are series of problems that will be identified in the research. Series of recommendations will be made from the research report. But donors are not going to implement all the recommendations in the report. They will have to review the report thoroughly and determine or select a specific problem that can be addressed at the moment, while other problems might be addressed later on. That is the project setup phase. And that project setup phase is aimed at gaining adequate understanding of the research report and also be able to decide on the specific intervention for the particular community. So that is the project setup phase. Once the project is set up, they now have an idea about a specific issue they are going to address. They move to planning. And this is planning phase where they now develop the project plan, which has to do with setting up the project schedule, coming up with the project activities, and also being able to come up with the project structure, which has to do with the work breakdown structure, how the activities will be implemented in terms of sequence. All right. And then you come up with a clear role and responsibilities of every team member on the project. That means assigning team members to a different role on the project and also being able to allocate resources to every activity, which has to do with the detailed budgeting. That is the planning phase. So all these things will be done. You can develop a risk management plan. Risk management plan will be looking at what are some of the potential risks for our project. And if these risks happen, how is it going to impact our project? They call that the risk rating, where we have a score for each risk. There are high risks, they got medium risks, and they got low risks. High risks are risks that when they occur, it deeply impact the project. Medium risks may occur and it will impact the project, but not to that extent. But the low rate, even if the low rate occurs, it doesn't really change anything. Okay? So these are the three rates level within project management, and we try to label the different rates we have at these different levels: the high risk, the medium risk, and the low risk. Then we come up with mitigation strategy. Mitigation strategy is where we go into our room as a project team and then develop a plan on how we are going to mitigate or reduce these risks if they occur just in our project implementation. Why, if this happens, what are we going to do? What if this happens? What are we going to do? Then you develop that risk management plan. During the project planning, we also develop the communication plan, which establishes how we are going to communicate throughout the project. This could be how reports will be generated and who will be receive report, chain of commands, chain of reporting. It has to do with structure, setting up the organizational structure for the project so that everyone knows how they are going to work and who is going to report to who, and how will the report be compared to a final report leading to different outputs. For example, it could be the inception report, it could be the May 10 report, it could be the final report. All these different reports that will be produced, how are you going to collect the data? How are you going to report the data? How are you going to analyze the data and develop the report and present the findings or the report to the donors? So that is a clear communication plan. There's also important aspect to stakeholder planning. Stakeholder planning is where we are going to work with different stakeholders on this project, coming down from beneficiaries, coming down to project partners, looking at sponsors and also donors, and looking at other influencers as well. There could be people directly involved or outside of the project, but they are influential. So these are stakeholders. We need to think about how we're going to manage them. How are we going to work with different stakeholders? Now, for stakeholder management, you have different levels. All right. You have user. The users are the end user, the beneficiaries of the project. They are also stakeholders. You need to work with them. You also have sustainer. Sustainers are people who you depend on to keep the project up once it has been implemented. For example, you build a hand pump project, you need sustainability. How are you going to sustain the project? You might choose to train certain few members of the community who are going to be in charge of maintaining the hand pump. That is sustainability. And that sustainability is basically looking at different stakeholders. There are people who are going to be involved with the sustainability of the project. They are sustainer. You also have influencer. Influencers are people who are leaders, people who have direct influence on the people who have direct influence in the community. These are community leaders and all that. They are very important because they can say yes, they can say no, and they have deep impact on your project and determines the success of the project as well. So getting these stakeholders to support your project is a boost and also a sign of success once you achieve that aspect. That is why you need to conduct community entry, or you need to have stakeholders engagement where you engage all the different stakeholders that are involved in the project as well. So all these things happen within the project planning phase. However, for today, we are going to look at project design, which is specifically looking at the beginning phase of the project or starting the project. So we're going to have key objectives from this lesson today. One is we're going to learn how to identify project goals, project objectives, and the project inputs and activities. We'll also be able to learn about how to identify key project stakeholders, which are very important in project design. We will also explore the 7 relevant M&E questions that you need to ask at designing every project. You need to ask yourself these 7 relevant questions, and they are all M&E questions because these are questions we are going to collect data on. These are questions we are going to report on. And also looking at roles and responsibility of project staff. M&E officers are also important in helping delegate different project tasks to team members on the project. Apart from that, it's also important to know about M&E activities and developing an M&E budget. So it depends on the project and how your organization works. But having an M&E budget is a very important aspect for project success. And in fact, it's an assurance that you will have effective monitoring and evaluation just by having M&E plan, M&E budget, and the different M&E framework setup so that you'll be able to and clearly and effectively monitor and evaluate a project. So in project design, basically, monitoring and evaluation, M&E, is a crucial part, is an important aspect in project management and in the design phase. What happens is monitoring and evaluation provides us a framework for gathering and analyzing data on progress and impact of the project. The primary purpose of monitoring and evaluation is to understand, is to gather track, is to keep track on progress and also be able to gather the project results, the impact of the project. These are important things for monitoring and evaluation. However, monitoring and evaluation is not only looking at collecting and analyzing data on an ongoing project, it's also important in project design. Before even the project starts, monitoring and evaluation must also start so that we are able to collect data on the problem, understand the problem, analyze the problem, come up with the right solution, and be able to monitor and evaluate the process. So monitoring and evaluation will help us to analyze a problem using the problem tree analysis. So with monitoring and evaluation, we are able to analyze a particular problem and come up with the right solution to that problem using what we call the problem tree method. The problem tree method is a method of analyzing a particular problem using a strategic process. And that process has to do with identifying the main problem that you see in the community, and also identifying the root causes to the problem. What leading to that problem? That has to do with the root causes. Then you also look at the effects of that particular problem. Once the problem is occurring, what is that problem leading to? What are the effects to that particular problem? So monitoring evaluation helps us to conduct problem tree analysis. Problem tree analysis is also called cause and effect analysis, where we try to understand the cause and the effect of a particular problem on an environment and on a specific group of people. Then we also look at how to map our stakeholders. Monitoring and evaluation will help us map out stakeholders who are relevant and must be involved in the design of the project. Monitoring and evaluation helps us map our stakeholders. They call this stakeholders mapping. So stakeholder mapping is very important in the project design. Before any project is implemented, that project must have identified its stakeholders from the initial stage so that we are able to work with every stakeholder at different levels and ensure that they are included in the project. Remember, the 5 principles of project management highlight participation as a key aspect in project success. If your project must be successful, then your project must be participatory. It must include all relevant stakeholders and also make sure that they are involved in the design of the project. This is one of the criteria for evaluation. It's called project relevance. Project relevance. If your project is relevant, it means that your project considers goals, development goals. It means that your project considers key stakeholders. It means that your project looks at the beneficiaries. That is the project relevance. That is the project importance. That is the project justification. And this is important to establish this during the project initiation or the project design phase. So number 1, we analyze the problem. Number 2, we map out the stakeholders who are to be involved in the project design. Number 3, we develop SMART goals and objectives for our project. Monitoring evaluation helps us to develop or create SMART project goals and objectives. These SMART goals are specific. Our goals and objectives are specific. They are clear enough and they are specific to a particular environment and a particular problem. Monitoring and evaluation helps us set measurable goals and objectives. Our goals are measurable. They can be measured. All right? We can tell when there is change. We can tell if we have made an impact. We can tell if we have made a difference in an environment. That means our goal is measurable. Now, can you measure anything? Can you measure change without understanding the baseline? That change, if you don't know where you started from, there's no way you are going to measure change. All right, that's a very nice one. Now, assuming you are a study class teacher and you were assigned to a particular kid to teach the child, and you just went there as an instructor and just ran strictly into teaching without trying to understand the level of the child, the level of understanding of the child, their current performance in school, and other things that will inform you of where you are picking a child from, so that when there is a change, we can tell. You can vividly tell us that this was the level of the child. In fact, these are performances. I can show you grades for the child before I came, and these are performances or grades of the child after my few time with the child. And that is a clear way of measuring success. So we can tell before you came, how was the situation? And now you came, and afterwards, how is the situation? That will tell us if there's a change. But without the baseline or without understanding the situation before you came, there's no way we are going to tell if there's a difference. That is why baseline is very important. Before we start any project, we need to understand where we are starting from. What's the current level? What is the current level of the project? If you want to start an educational related project, for example, to reduce the high rate of illiteracy in the country, of let's say high rate of computer illiteracy in Liberia, the first thing is you need to understand the current literacy rate in the computer area. How well or how knowledgeable are people, especially the target group? Let's say you are targeting young people between the ages of 18 to 24. So you need to carry out a baseline study to inform you of the current status of young people between ages of 18 to 24 when it comes to digital or computer knowledge. How well do they play with it? Are they knowledgeable about it? Do they have existing schools or institutions that offer these programs? And if yes, why are people not going there? Is it that they are expensive or they are limited in numbers? What is the main challenge with it? So you need to understand the current situation and know the increase or the rate at which we have when it comes to computer illiteracy. Then you are able to set a clear pace for change so that when you intervene in the situation, let's say you constructed a computer school, or let's say you decided to create a computer program where you were able to provide some short-term computer training courses to this group or target groups within a specific time frame. Let's say you're running it for like 2 years project, and you are going to do every quarter you train certain group of people, certain number of people. After that 2 years, there will be significant change because you are able to go back and reference your baseline data to tell that this was the situation before my project or before my intervention. But now we have intervened and we are carrying out our own some set of programs and so on. These are the differences, the changes in the current situation we met. Now the rate of illiteracy in computer has actually reduced to some significant number. We can tell, and we can easily tell. Maybe in that particular community, doing our assessment, we realized that out of the 500 young people in that age range, only 50 were computer literate. So we were able to know that 450 of them were actually not computer literate. And then our program is going to run for 3 years, and we are going to ensure that at least 300 people are trained and they have that skill to operate and use a computer. So after the 3 years, these 50 people, these 300 people who are trained per cycle will now be, part of the 50 that are already trained or already have the knowledge, which will be 350. That is a huge impact because you see that we only have 150 left who still do not have the knowledge, but instead we now have 350, which we can measure that change. So measurable goals and objectives are designed by monitoring evaluation, and this is extremely important in every project. Monitoring evaluation also helps us to set up attainable goals and objectives. We are not just setting ambiguous goals, or we are not just setting big bang audacious goals that are beyond our thinking, goals that are beyond our resources, goals that are beyond our capacity or whatever it is. But we are setting up goals that are achievable, that are attainable, so something that we can achieve, and we can easily tell that we have the resources required, human was, materials, financial, to achieve this particular project. And that is very important. So we don't set goals that are so much above us in that we are not able to achieve it. Someone raised their hand. All right. So apart from the goal being attainable, our goals should be realistic. Our goal should be realistic. Now, what do we mean by goal being realistic? We are talking about goal being relevant, important, important. Your goal should be important. Your project goals and objectives should be important. It should be important, number one, to the beneficiary. Are the beneficiaries in need of what you are going to provide? Do they need it? Did they request it? That is why you have to do your needs assessment to know what do they really need. So are the community members in need of that particular thing that you want to do? That is the relevance, or that is the realistic aspect of your project. It should be realistic, it should be relevant, it should be important. Apart from the beneficiaries, the project you want to do or the goals you have set, is it important to donors? How does it meet your donors' requirements? Is it important to African Union? Is it important to the United Nations? Is it important to our Propo agenda for prosperity and development? Is it highlighted there? Is it important to the UN Sustainable Development Goals? Is it important in the AU Agenda 2063? Is it important in the youth chapter? Is it important in the community? Has the community demand for this, or demanded or requested for this? So it is important to know that we set project goals and objectives based on the project, based on the relevance, based on the importance. And then lastly, the goals and the objectives should be time bound. It shouldn't be everlasting. Anything that is set up and that is everlasting, it is not a project. A project is temporary. A project, whether it's going for 10 years, it is temporary, because we can tell that within 10 years it is finished. So every project must have a time bound. It must have a clear time frame, start and end dates. Very important. Another thing is that monitoring and evaluation helps us to determine the necessary resources and activities to achieve the project goals and objectives. When we talk about resources, we are talking about inputs. Inputs. These resources can be human. These resources can be skills, knowledge, and expertise. These resources can be time. These resources can be materials. They can be equipment and other things that you will require. Resources are the investment for the project, or inputs are the investment for the project. These are things we put in or we invest to achieve the project. We invest resources to help us achieve or to help us carry out the project activities. What are the project activities? Project activities are the work we do to achieve the project outputs. What are the work we do? It could be training, it could be minting, it could be assessment, it could be a workshop, it could be construction, it could be anything. Whatever we do to make sure we achieve the project output, they are activities. While outputs are the product from the activities. If we conduct workshop, the product from the workshop is knowledge. If we conduct awareness, the product from the awareness is information. The people who listen to us will be informed. They will have the information. They will be knowledgeable. If we conduct construction, there's a product, maybe a house, maybe a pump. Something will come out of that construction. That is an output. So project activities are implemented to achieve specific project outputs. while we have the project objectives, which are the changes or which are the temporary or short-term results that we want to see from the project. These are specific areas that the project will achieve. The project goal is the overall change that the project will contribute to. For example, reducing poverty, for example, increasing unemployment, for example, transforming lives, for example, improving livelihood, for example, sustainable programs and all that. So all these things we do, these are goals or impact. They are at the larger extent of the project. Monitoring and evaluation also helps us to identify project staff or the required expertise or skills for a particular project. Every project requires specific expertise or skills of staff for the project to be successfully implemented. If you are implementing a project in the forestry sector, you need to have some people on the project team with that knowledge of forestry so that it will help you gain adequate way of implementing that particular project. That's why normally you can have consultants who will bring in the required knowledge or required skills you need for that particular project. Monitoring and evaluation also helps us to determine the cost for our M&E activities. Monitoring and evaluation is an important aspect in organization and in project. And that is why it is important to budget for M&E so the process can be effective and efficient as well. Now, what are the 7 relevant questions when it comes to monitoring and evaluation? Whenever we are designing a new program or coming up with a new project or developing a new policy, we need to ask ourselves these 7 questions, and they are very important. Number 1, we need to ask ourselves, what is the problem we are trying to solve? This is very important in every project. Before we come up with a project, there is a situation. There's a problem. There is something we see that we are not okay with. Every project or program is designed to address a particular problem or an issue that we have identified. That issue we have identified must be explored further so that we can properly understand the problem we are trying to solve. This has to do with going down to the root causes or trying to understand all the different things around a particular problem. This is why we say problem identification and also problem definition. We need to identify the problem and define the problem. What is the problem? What is it really we are going to solve? Number 2, once we analyze and understand the problem very well, we need to ask ourselves, what are the desired results? What are we going to change? So, one of the ways to determine the objectives is to transform the problems into our objectives. Is to transform the problems into objectives. I will give you an example. We identify a problem of increased unemployment among youth in Liberia. That is a problem. Increased unemployment among youth in Liberia. My question is, if we were to turn that problem into an objective, what would be our objective? Increased unemployment. So our objective will be to reduce unemployment rate or to reduce unemployment among youth in Liberia. That is strictly opposite our problem. So the problem and the objectives are opposite. The problem are the negatives, the negative situation, while the objectives are the future situation. What we want to see happen. When the problem is solved, what will we see? We will see reduced unemployment. We will see unemployment reduced, and that is the future state, and it is called the project objective. That is our desired results. We want to see unemployment reduced. We don't want to see it increased. All right, so that is the opposite to the problem altogether, and that is one way you cannot you carry this out, and it is called objective tree as well. Just as we have the problem tree, we also have objective tree. The problem tree allows us to understand the causes and effect of a specific problem we have identified, while the objective tree turns or transforms all these problems into actions or into future states, into better states, all right, into positive states instead of the negative state. Now, I gave another example. Let's say we also saw that one of the causes to lack of safe drinking water, one of the causes to lack of safe drinking water was the lack of hand pump in the community. What would be our objective if we were to implement a project relating to that problem? Lack of hand. Objective would be to provide, right? To provide hand pump to the community, right? All right. All right. And once you provide hand pump to the community, you are increasing access to safe drinking water. Am I correct? As exactly. And increasing access to safe drinking water is our objective. But for us to increase access to safe drinking water, we need to construct the hand pump. Once we reach to the theory of change, we'll be able to clearly see the different results level. All right, we'll be able to break down the different result level. For example, even the outcomes have three levels. You got long-term outcomes, you have intermediate outcomes, you also have short-term outcomes, or you can call that immediate outcomes. So outcomes also have different levels. Just as the objectives have long term, it also has intermediate and somehow a short term or immediate objectives that the project will achieve. All right. So depending on the specific project we are implementing, to have these different levels of objective. But the reality is, every project objective is contributing toward a project goal, a specific impact, a broader change that we want to make. And that is where we'll be going. So, number three question we should be able to ask ourselves when we are developing a new program or so is, we need to, once we have crafted or we have decided on the objective for our project, we need to determine the resources required, the resources necessary to achieve our results. And these resources are inputs, human, materials, equipment, financial, and other resources you think or you believe, based on the project goals or the project objectives, you think these resources are important for the project to be successful. They are inputs. You need to also think about that. What are the resources we need? What are the human resources we need? What are the financial and the technical, the skill, the expertise, and everything, the experience, and all that? We need to tap on these resources. Another key resource we also need to tap on is looking at our enterprise resources. And the enterprise resources could look talking about the previous experiences, your previous experiences on projects. You have implemented several projects and you have learned, you have documented lessons learned, challenges you encountered, and you've been able to gain some proper understanding or experience from these different projects you have implemented. You should be able to gather some resources from these learnings so that you can go back and then be able to improve on the subsequent project that you have. That is very important as well. Number four, we need to ask ourselves about the activities that we need to carry out based on the problem we see. For example, coming back to our hand pump project that we said, all right, we want to increase access to safe drinking water by constructing hand pump or so, whatever it is. So one of our activities will be what? We'll be carrying out assessment first to understand the problem, the situation, and we've already done that. And then we'll be able to construct hand pumps, right? And after constructing hand pumps, or even before constructing hand pumps, there might be inception meetings correct, meeting with the community, meeting with the leaders and all that, where they will be able to give their full support and also be able to give in their commitment to the process. And then we also need to get higher contractors that will construct the hand pump. We need to also mobilize resources to be able to get the materials, to procure the materials for the hand pump construction. Then we also need to carry out the construction itself. All right. These are all activities that we need to do for the construction of the hand pump to be done. We also will have to carry out some awareness, and the awareness will be looking at making sure that community members are encouraged and also given the importance of using the hand pump instead of the other way of how they access water, because they know that there's the water they drink from is causing some waterborne diseases and there's causing some health problem and all that. So based on our assessment, we already identified these problems and saw that these are causes or effects of the problem. And so we will be able to carry out awareness to discourage them from using the other side of drinking water or something, but while they can use the safer side, which we have already provided through our construction of the hand pump. Now, we need to look at the products. What are we going to produce from these different activities? Now, when we carry out construction of hand pump, what is the product? That's awesome. Exactly. So the product will be hand pump, which give access to safe drinking water. So that will be produced. Okay. So that is the output as well. Very important. Then number 6 will be looking at the benefits of these products. Now, when we construct the hand pump, what is the benefit of the hand pump? Can anyone know the product we are going to provide? The benefit of the product we are going to provide. So the benefit to the beneficiary, these are outcomes. We have the beneficiaries of the for a particular project. So what do they benefit? What do they benefit? These are the outcomes. It has to do with the use of knowledge. It has to do with increasing something. It has to do with decreasing something. And it has to do with improving access and all that. So like we said, there will be improved access to safe drinking water. That is the benefit for constructing hand pump. Then the last question we want to ask ourselves is what change will all this make? It's very important as well. So the last question that we need to ask ourselves is what change will all this make? All the things we will do with the hand pump project and so on, what will be the change that we are going to make? That has to do with the impact, and also it has to do with the goal of the project. So you share with us. We've done the hand pump, as you said. The hand pump has created access to safe drinking water, and we see that the community now have access to improved safe drinking water. And now, what is the change that has made? The problem was the community members had some health issues. They had poor health condition because of the lack of access to safe drinking water. And we realized from the assessment that they never had any hand pump constructed. So we thought that we could develop a project to create access to safe drinking water, that is constructing hand pump. So we constructed a hand pump. Now the community has hand pump available. They also have access to safe drinking water through that hand pump we constructed. So Gloria is saying the overall impact of that project is improved health condition, so that they now drink safe water and they are no longer getting diarrhea and several other illnesses, or so they are now healthy. Yes, that's very right. Yes. So thank you very much. So I mean, this single project of just constructing a hand pump has made us to think about several changes that have occurred in the community. So you can see that one project can lead to several changes. And like Mr. Johnson said, we will need to conduct impact evaluation. And this is something we learned about in the previous lessons, where we talked about process evaluation. And process evaluation looks at the implementation, all right, the activities. and the resources we put in the project, and the steps we took, how well we use resources to achieve the project results, how well we implemented activities, how well we use our time, how well we use our resources and everything to achieve the project. That's process evaluation. We also have outcomes evaluation. Outcomes evaluation try to assess the changes within the beneficiaries, which has to do with the benefit of the project or the benefit of the particular intervention. So, like we said, access to safe drinking water, we will now be able to carry out our outcome evaluation to understand the benefit of that project to the beneficiary. How is that project benefiting the community? That is our outcome evaluation. Then we look at the impact evaluation, which has to do with the change. What is now changed, or what has changed as a result of the community having access to safe drinking water? Has it improved their health? Because all these things we are saying, they are assumptions. We are assuming that when the hemp pump is constructed and the community members have access to the water and the water is safe enough, we are assuming that they will be healthy. Their health will improve. We are assuming that diarrhea will reduce. We are assuming that cholera illnesses will reduce. All these things we are saying now, they are all assumptions based on the research we conducted. And we need to test these assumptions by carrying out impact evaluation, which will mean going back to the community after a certain period of time to assess or to assess the changes that this intervention has actually led to, so we can be sure that, oh, we were making the right assumption that yes, this has actually reduced the diarrhea illnesses and all that. This has actually improved the health condition. There are not many people going to the health center for diarrhea cases. There are not many people going for cholera cases, and the people are now healthy. People are now doing better. And in fact, the risks or the danger of people going to the creeks, as Joshua mentioned, we have seen that there's no much cases of violence or sexual abuse as it used to be because of the vulnerability. All these things will be coming up, but we need to be able to do that evaluation by going back into the community to tell us that yes, what we said as our assumptions were actually correct, and these are the impacts, and we come back to communicate that change as impact story to our donors, even to the beneficiaries, and also other people who would like to be informed about it. So this is extremely important for our project as well. And during the impact evaluation, we can also be able to use that period to assess sustainability. We are going to see whether the community is sustaining the impact or the change we have made. How well are they taking care of the hemp pump and all that, whether their system is working or not? Because when we do that evaluation, that will tell that the community is still doing very, very well. So these are the 7 unique questions that we ask when we are developing any new program. And these questions will help us clearly see our project. All right. So there is something called the monitoring and evaluation logic, M&E logic. Every project has logic. Every project has a theory of change. Every project has a logical framework. But sometimes this theory of change might not be graphically created. All right. There might be a narrative. They will be in the form of a narrative, just a story. All right. A story about the process, about the change that they want to see. You will see a clear story telling us about the problem. For example, if you read a project background, if you go and research online and read any project background, you will be able to see the problem that that project is trying to address. You will also see the objectives. You will also see the overall impact of that project. You will also see other components that we have mentioned above. That is the M&E logic. And it can be a theory of change. It can also be a logical framework. And the M&E logic is an important M&E model of designing a project, a program, or a policy. So monitoring evaluation M&E logic model helps us to develop strong programs. It gives us an opportunity to evaluate and also be able to collect evidence or information about the project, which will help us justify why this project is important. For example, the hemp pump project we mentioned. After our study, we will communicate to the donors about the problems we have identified, the health issues, the health implications, and the risks that problem puts at pose at the beneficiaries and all that, and the importance of that particular project. How urgent is it? So once we justify that very well, then we were able to convince the donor for the project to be implemented. The logical model help us to identify what needs to be achieved. This is coming up with the objectives, and then it also gives us a clear pathway, which are the steps we need to take to get there. What are the pathways for our change? Remember, when you check on the stream, you will see two logic models. We have the theory of change. We also have the logical framework. The theory of change is it's a causal pathway. It shows the causal pathway of how change will be made, coming from the activities all the way to the end result, which is the goal. For change to occur, there must be activity implemented, and these activities must produce some results, which are outputs. These outputs must also be a benefit to the community or the beneficiaries. These are outcomes. Then these outcomes must also contribute or should create a specific change, which are objectives. It could be short term, it could be long term, it could be intermediate. And these objectives should also be able to contribute to a larger change, which is the goal or the impact. So this is a logic, this is causal pathways for the project to achieve the change that we want to see. So you said that by 2025, you want to reduce unemployment by a certain percent. That is the goal. But the question is, how are you going to achieve that goal? We want to know the steps you are going to take. What are the activities you are going to implement? It could be you are going to provide skill training across the country, and you are going to also encourage investors to come into countries because they're going to provide employment opportunity in the different areas. You're going to provide a scholarship opportunity to increase capacity building and all that. So these are all activities you're going to do, initiatives. You also look at outputs. All these initiatives will produce some unique results, and these results will bring some benefit to the beneficiaries, and all these will create some value. All right. And lastly, they will lead to some extent reduction in the unemployment rate by 2025 if they are all implemented accordingly. That is the theory of change. Then we also have the logical framework, which is also called the law frame. The logical framework is the 4x4 matrix, which explains to us also the pathway for change to be created. But the difference between the logical framework and the theory of change is that the theory of change is a causal pathways because it can be drawn graphically, it can be drawn, and you can have the links between the different results. For example, like you can see on the board, you will see activity leading to the output leading to the outcome leading to objective, the objective leading to the goal. For logical framework, it is not in that graphical representation. It is in the form of a table. And this is a 4x4 table, which has the objectives, the outcomes, the outputs, and the activities. And you also have the description of the objective or the result level. You also have the indicators. Indicators, as you are aware, they are qualitative or quantitative variable that we use to measure change. All right, to show change. And now, when we see that more people are using the road, then we can now tell that there is a change. If we see that more people are using the hand pump, then we can tell that there's increased access. All right. So the number of people who are using the hand pump or the number of community members who are using the hand pump, that will tell us the change. Now remember this, there will still be people using the creeks. Not because we have hand pump in the community means that everyone in that environment will use the hand pump. There will still be few of them using the creek. But what we want to do is, we already have a clear picture. Let's say we have an inhabitant of 50 members in the community. Out of that 50, we realize that about 30 of them are using the hand pump, while 20 are not using the hand pump otherwise. So the number of people who are using the hand pump is an indicator that shows increased access. And so we will need to collect data to collect data after the hand pump is constructed. We need to collect data on the usage so that when people are using the hand pump, we are aware of how many people are using it on a regular basis for certain period of time. Let's say we collect that data for 1 month or 2 months, so that within 1 month or 2 months, we can tell the number of people using it. Day one, we assume that 5 people use the hand pump. Day 2, 6. Day 3, just like that. And then you will see that in a 1 month or 2 months period, there might be increased number of people using the hand pump. That is an indicator to show that there is a change, and that change is increased access to safe drinking water. And we can measure it. What is our baseline? From the first start, we knew that there was no hand pump in that community. There was zero hand pump, and so there was zero access to safe drinking water. So the baseline says zero access to safe drinking water. Now we can tell that we have 30 people out of 50 who are using the hand pump. That is a real change. That is huge impact we have made in the community. All right. So that is just an example of indicator. So indicators are set for different levels. They are set for the objective level. They are set for the outcomes level. They are set for the outputs level, and they are set for the activities level. Now, in the logical framework, when we talk about objectives, it's the same as the goal. Don't confuse it. When we talk about objective is defined as the goal, the impact, or the end result or desired result in the logical framework. So when you're designing the logical framework, your goal is the same as the objective, is the same as the impact, is the same as the end result of the project, which is the highest result level in the project, in the logical framework. Then the outcomes is the purpose or the benefit. Okay, the outcome is defined as the benefit of the project or the benefit of the product that you have provided, which we said the benefit is that the community have access to safe drinking water, which we mentioned. And then we said the overall goal is that it will improve their health condition as well. So the community members will have improved health condition, which is the overall goal. And the outcomes or the benefits will be access to safe drinking water, which we can tell the change as based on the number of people who are using the hand pump after the project has ended. Then we look at the output level. The output level. Now, under the output level, we said that hand pump constructed. That was our output. Hand pump constructed. Now, the question is, what is the indicator that a hand pump constructed? What is the indicator for that output? We said zero hand pump. That is the baseline. Zero hand pump. So there's no hand pump in the community. So the output is the number of hand pump constructed. Let's say we constructed 2 hand pumps. The baseline says 0 hand pump. Now that we have constructed 2 hand pumps, we'll now be able to say 2 hand pumps constructed. So instead, if there's a change, that means we have provided 2 hand pumps as compared to when the project was not there. There was 0 hand pump. Now we have 2 hand pumps constructed. So that is what we're talking about when we talk about logical framework. And logical framework is looking at the indicators as well for the different result level in our project. Then you have the means of verification. The means of verification are the data sources. The data sources. Where do we get information from to verify the indicator? So we said that increase access to safe drinking water. We said our indicator will be looking at the number of people who are using the hand pump. How do we get information on the number of people who are using the hand pump? The hygiene promoter data report. Is that correct? The hygiene Yes, they are gene promoter report, their data report, because they are going to collect the data and then their data report will show the increased number of people who are using the hemp pump. So that is the means of verification. Thank you very much. So the last aspect within the logical framework looks at assumptions. And remember from our M&E terms, we said assumptions are external conditions that the project need or the project require for the successful completion or for the success of the project. These assumptions are positive, they are not negative. They are positive, but they are external conditions that we need, that our project need for it to be successful. Remember, from the initial stage, we were making assumptions that if we do this, this will happen. If we do this, this will happen. All these things we're saying, they were all assumptions. Now, the question I'm asking is, we said there will be increased number of people using the hemp pump. What is our assumption? What will be one key assumption for us to achieve that objective? For us to have increased access to safe drinking water, what are we going to be assuming, or what will be the assumption? Anyone can share with us? All right. People will actually. All right. Anyone else? All right. Very good. The hemp pump remain durable for use. Yes, that's a very good assumption, because if the hemp pump is not durable, then the people will not access it. It's very important. Or in other words, we could say the community will maintain the hemp pump. That could be another assumption as well. That because if they don't maintain the hemp pump well, then it will not be durable, and then they will not have access to it as well. That is also an assumption. Thank you very much. So I'm just thought to have a clear picture of how basically we can do these things. So we currently have assignments, all right, for our M&E students, and the assignments are to create the theory of change and a logical framework. So you will use a case study project which you might design on your own. So you can find any problem, you can identify any problem in your community or so on, and then you will create a theory of change of that problem. That is, you will set the goal, the objective, the outcome, the output, and the activity, and then you will come to set or develop the theory, the logical framework for it. Remember, once you do the theory of change, you can easily do the logical framework, because within the theory of change, you already have the goal, you already have the objectives, you already have the outcomes, you already have the output and the activity. So you are just going to input them in the logical framework. All you need to do now will be developing the indicators for all these results. And then you will also be able to come up with a clear means of verification. All right, how are you going to collect the data, or how are you going to verify each result? And then you also need to come up with assumption, like we mentioned, that the community will maintain the pump, people will be encouraged to use the pump, and all that. These are assumptions we are actually going to be making. So assumptions are made at objective level or the goal level. They are also made at the outcomes level, and they are also made at the outputs level. For our activities level, we don't make much assumptions, because a key assumption for the activity level will be looking at resources will be available for us to carry out the project. Human power will be available. The skills and other things will be available, and these are internal factors. So we actually have control over these assumptions in real life, because we are implementing the project. We have control over what we do. But at the outcomes and objective level, we do not have control over them. We do not have control over the beneficiary. For example, we can build a pump, but we cannot control the beneficiary to use it. They will have to be encouraged to use it. All right, we cannot we can construct the hemp pump, but we cannot control that the hemp pump alone will make them healthy. There might be some poor hygiene practices that will lead to diarrhea and other things apart from just a hemp pump. So there might be existing problems there that you know. That doesn't mean our project is not impactful, because that they are still getting sick. even though we have created safe drinking water. We need to understand that despite we provided safe drinking water, there is still possibility for other existing problems to create these other problems that we identify there. So that's why we do not have control over the objectives, the outcomes assumptions. But we make these assumptions so that we can implement the project with bearing in mind that these are the conditions we need to meet. So, for example, we said that one condition we need to meet, or one assumption we make, is the community members will be encouraged to use the hand pump. So it means that we should carry out some awareness, encouraging them. We need to come up with a strategy on how we are going to make them encouraged to use the hand pump. How are we going to encourage them? So, because that is an assumption we are making, and we need to make an effort so that our assumption can be correct. We also said that the community members or the community will maintain, they will provide a support to maintain the hand pump. We cannot just say that and sit back. We need to develop strategy on how we are going to get the community to support. So it means that the community should commit to it. We should train them on how they can maintain the hand pump, and the rest of it should follow. The community leadership should also be involved in making sure they commit to maintaining the hand pump so that they can rally around the community at all times to make sure the hand pump is durable and lasting for a longer period. So these are very important assumptions. These assumptions we make are meant to help us design strategies for our implementation so that we can achieve the project at the end of everything.